Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank one of my subscribers, JG, for this article, October 16th, 2018, from NPR. NPR poll: rural Americans are worried about addiction and jobs, but remain optimistic. Rural Americans are preoccupied with the problems of opioids and drug addiction in their communities, citing it as a worry on par with concerns on local jobs and economy, according to new poll. Yeah, they should be concerned about that because one thing, rural America is dying. A lot of those people are getting closer and closer to the city, or they're just straight up moving to the city. I think that kind of living was okay years ago, but as population sizes get smaller and smaller, it's going to be harder for people to be in those areas because, look, I did stories on them closing hospitals, closing maternity wards because hardly nobody's coming in to have babies. And soon they're going to have to do, you hear about people, oh, I got to drive 30 miles away to go to the nearest supermarket. A lot of people with gas prices, no, they don't want to do that kind of stuff anymore. For many years, the opioid plague was seen as affecting only a few states: West Virginia, Kentucky, and New Hampshire, among others. But it never was just about those states, says poll co-director Robert J. Blendon, a professor of public health, and let me just go down a bit. They know that economically things are really serious, and a lot of people in rural areas now know this. And another big issue there are, they have a hard time finding jobs in those areas, which is another factor that drives them closer to the cities. Nearly equal proportion cited drug addiction or abuse, including opioids, and economic concerns as the biggest problem facing their local communities. The difference between these two big problems, and they're talking about financial and health concerns, was statistically significant nationally, but rural residents of Appalachia cited drug addiction or abuse, including opioids, as the biggest problem in their communities, much more frequently, 41%, than did adults in other rural areas. And as you can see, they show what their concerns are. In Appalachia, 41%. And economic concerns was like a second concern. It's really sad. On a national level, only 25% of the people are concerned about the opioid plague. That's kind of low. Economic concerns, 21%. Wow, with the rate that people are dying, you think that would be bigger. That's kind of low. 25% out of the whole country, nationally? Woo! Talk about not being concerned about your own. Even as opioids and drug addiction have risen to essentially the same level of economic concerns, our polls show clearly that rural America is far from monolithic. In fact, the polls also find strong strains of optimism about the future in rural America. 8 in 10 rural Americans say they feel their lives are turning out either as they expected, 42%, or better, 41%. Only 15% said things are worse than they thought they would be. Majority, 54%, said they are better off financially when compared with their parents at the same age. And a majority of rural parents, 55%, said they think their children will be better off financially compared with themselves. Rural Americans are optimistic about the future. And there's also optimistic that things can be done to pull themselves out of the economic problems that they do face, said Blandon. One reason, while some rural communities are truly suffering, others are thriving. Okay. So they're saying, let me just go down a bit. Health and economic concerns. Still, when asked to name the biggest problem facing their families as opposed to their community, people cited financial problems most frequently, followed by health or healthcare concerns. No other issues were mentioned by more than 5% of the respondents. Drug or opioid addiction was cited most often as the most urgent health problem by rural Americans, followed by cancer and access to health care. So you can see right here in the chart. So 23% were concerned about the opioids, 12% cancer, and 11% access to health care. An overwhelmingly majority nationwide said the problem of people being addicted to opioids in their local community has either gotten worse, 48%, or remained about the same, 40%, in the past 5 years. So actually, most people believe it got worse. White rural Americans are more worried about a worsening opioid problem than are other racial and ethnic groups. They were more likely, 52%, than African Americans, 32%, Latinos, 30%, to say the opioid problem in their local community has gotten worse over the past 5 years. And younger rural Americans of all races and ethnicity were significantly more likely to say they know someone who has struggled with opioid addiction. Among those 18 to 54 years old, 59% said they knew someone, compared with 42% of older rural Americans. And while there is optimism about the future, there is also plenty of negativity among rural Americans about the state of their local economy. When asked to rate the economy of the region where they live and work, a majority, 55%, rated their local economy as only fair or poor. Rural Americans said that providing opportunities through long-term job growth and better public schooling would be the most beneficial solutions. They also reported high job satisfaction, but a significant share said they believe it will be important for them to get new training or skills to keep their job or find a better job in the future. Okay. Retaining young people has always been a concern in rural America. The poll finds that 4 in 10 parents, 43%, with children over 18 said their children have moved out of their local community. In addition, 16% said some of their children have moved and some stayed. Of those parents whose children have moved, 61% said they moved to a city, followed by 17% who said their children moved to a suburb, and 21% who said their children moved to another rural area. About half, 52%, of parents whose adult children have moved away from their community said their children moved away for a job somewhere else, while 13% said their children had a hard time finding a good long-term job in their local community. More than one-third of younger rural Americans, 36%, said the overall number of good jobs in their local area has increased over the past 5 years, compared with 25% of older rural Americans. Okay. All right, so let's go down a little more. Will the problems that they do see be solved in the next 5 years? Have said they are confident they will be solved, but rural Americans largely see a need for outside help to solve them. All right. So the local groups would say the greatest role in solving their problems would be their state government, 30%, 18% federal government, 13% your county or regional government, 13% big business, 6% nonprofits, and religious organizations, 5%. All right. Overall, most rural Americans said that minority groups do not face discrimination in their local community. Who are you asking these questions to? That's who I want to know. Were these people that answered that question, were they considered minorities or not? But there are significant exceptions. Substantial numbers said they see discrimination against certain groups. 30% said they think transgender people are discriminated against in their community. 29% said recent immigrants to the US are, and 27% said gays and lesbians are. Significantly fewer rural Americans said that whites, 9%, Asians, 10%, and disabled people, 12%, are discriminated against in their local community. Despite rural Americans' low general recognition of discrimination, rural adults belonging to minority groups are much more likely to identify discrimination against members of their own group. For example, 21% of all rural Americans said they believe Latinos are generally discriminated against in their local community. Yet 44% of Latinos living in rural areas said they did. The survey was conducted June 6th through August 4th among a nationally representative probability-based phone sample. So they actually called these people up and did the surveys with them by phone. The surveys were conducted in English and Spanish. The margin of error for total respondents was 3.6% points at the 95% confidence level. The samples of rural Americans is defined in this survey as adults living in areas that are not part of a metropolitan statistical area. Okay, so they did this national poll on different rural areas. So as you can see, opioids is still topping as their biggest concern in these areas. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video.